Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video with the adventures of the memory makers. I know it's been a while since we posted anything, and I want to say thank you to all the subscribers that reached out to us and asked if everything was okay. That really touched me, and I just want to say thank you for that. And I'll be honest, there for a while things were not okay. Cindy and I are fine. There's nothing like that. Cindy is recovering from a minor foot surgery right now, so I don't have a camera person. But I'll do the best I can today, filming what I need to film for you. But I'll address what the issue was at the end of the video for those of you that are curious as to what the issue was. But today, I'm very excited to get started on a project, and I want to bring you along on this project. It's something that I've wanted to do before I even owned the Teardrop. And I got the idea well, let me back up and just tell you what it is first. So, what I'm going to be doing today is adding a hitch receiver to our Bushwhacker Teardrop. And not only am I adding a hitch receiver, I'm going to be replacing the factory stabilizers that came with the camper. And I'm going to replace them with a different type of jack that will not only act as a stabilizer, but also act as a leveling jack and a recovery jack. So in the event that we get a flat tire on Bushy going down the road, we'll have a jack to get him up in the air and change that tire. And this is something that everyone should check, no matter what type of camper you have. A lot of campers don't come with jacks. So if you're planning on using your tow vehicle jack to jack up your camper, make sure that that tow vehicle jack will actually jack up your camper, because I don't think my truck jack will go high enough to get Bushy off the ground. His axle isn't a drop axle, so it sits up tight to the camper frame. And even my floor jack, I've got to put a 4x4 block on the jack pad in order to get enough travel out of my floor jack to get him in the air. So I, I just want to be prepared in the event that we ever have a breakdown going down the road, because just as soon as you aren't prepared for it, it's going to happen. So I encourage everyone, if you plan on using your tow vehicle jack, make sure to jack up your camper, no matter what type camper you have. But I'm going to grab the camera here, and I'm going to show you, what I've got right now with the camper, and then I'll show you what the plan is as far as the steps go in building this hitch receiver, and then the jacks I'm going to modify and use for my stabilizing, leveling, and recovery jacks. It's been an ordeal. you know, to think that you can go to town today and buy what you need to do a project with, oh, it's frustrating. For one, I can't get hardly anything in town anymore, and I've ordered in two sets of jacks that I was going to use. The first jacks came in too short, and I thought there was going to be a chance they might not work, so I sent them back and I ordered the longer set. Well, they came in the exact same length as the shorter set. Turns out it was the image showing the description and the length of the height of the jack was wrong on Amazon. So I sent those back. So now I'm on my third set of jacks that I'm going to use for this project, and I think I've got a winner here. I just want to say right up front that this is going to be a welding intensive project. So if you're not a welder, if you don't know a welder, or if you can't get it welded by taking it to a weld shop somewhere, this may not be a project for you that you want to tackle, because everything's going to be welded together in the end as far as the hitch receiver and the mounts for my recovery jacks. So just wanted to say that up front so you don't waste your time watching this and realize you got to do a lot of welding in order to do this project. So let me grab the camera, and I'm going to take you down and show you what we have, and then I'll show you what I've kind of got a head start on already, and then I'll just work our way through this project. I'd hope to be doing this outside, but it is so crazy windy here today. The winds are blowing like 25 sustained and gust 40 to 50 miles an hour outside. So you'll hear a big roar gust go past the garage here every now and then. And so that's the reason we're inside instead of outside. Although it is a nice, beautiful sunny day outside, but the camera would be upside down by now if we were out there. So let me grab the camera and we'll show you what you got. Show you. So here on the backside of Bushy, it's essentially just the way that we got it from the dealer when we bought it. There were some bushwhackers that you could get a hitch receiver for. I asked the dealer about it. He said he was not able to get it from the factory, which turned out to be okay, because I've seen that hitch and I really didn't care for it, and it wouldn't work for what I'm wanting to do today. So building my own isn't going to be that big of a deal, and I can at least make it the way that I want it. So you can see there's no hitch here currently. I've got the two factory stabilizers that came with it, and I'll just be honest with you, I hate them. I just want to throw them in the trash. They're loud, they shake around, they make all kinds of noise. And not only that, but I've talked to a lot of people that have got these things locked down so tight to the point where they had to remove it from the camper in order to be able to drive home at the end of their stay. So I just want to get rid of them before I have to deal with the problem. And they will not lift the camper up. Now, if you read the instructions on them, they say not to even put a load on it beyond what it takes to stabilize the camper. You aren't supposed to level the camper with these because it locks them into that threaded rod. And the design of it, it's just back here where all the dirt and dust and everything's going to be, and that exposed threaded shaft gets dirty, gets rusty, it locks up. So we're just going to take these off and throw them away. And what I'm going to do is I've got a template made. In fact, it's right here. So I've made a hitch plate side template, or a hitch, what do I call that? A hitch side plate template, let's call it that. And I made it out of Luan because I want something kind of strong that I could use to modify and play around with. So what I've done is I've shaped it so that it's going to mount to the side of the frame, and I'll show you the holes I'm going to use for it. And it turned out that these two holes were factory existing holes, so I was able to utilize that, and then I just had to drill the two additional holes here in the front, and they were exact. I take this is the right side with my drawing on it, and I could turn this around like this for the left side, and it lined right up. When I designed this, not only am I utilizing these four holes now to bolt it to the frame to support it, but it also goes up and rests. The frame is going to be like this, but the frame has an angle to it at the top, and this plate goes up and sits on the frame. So not only are the bolts carrying some of the load, but when I have the jack down and deployed and weight on it, it's also going to be transferring that load to the frame here as well. So just a little better dispersion of the load. I've got my hole already pre-cut here on my template for my 2-inch square tubing that is going to go across and attach to my hitch here in the middle. So this is the same template for both sides. I just flip it around. So I'm going to use 1/4-inch steel plate. And the reason I picked this size to begin with is I jack up a lot of homes and stabilize them, and I use steel plate as shims when I jack them up and re-level them. And I had this on hand, so I've got 1/4-inch steel plate that is this size already for me to cut this out of. If not, you would have to go out and acquire a 1/4-inch steel plate to do this with. But let me take these off real quick. I'll put my hitch on the way that it's going to be, and then I'll put this on the camper and show you what I've got, and then what steps I'm going to go through to get to the next point of this project. Okay, I got the factory stabilizers removed, and I've got my center part of my hitch that I'm going to use to build this hitch receiver mounted. And I just want to say right off the bat, I know someone's probably going to see this and say, wow, all you have to do is bolt a step hitch receiver to your camper and you've got a hitch receiver mount. Do not think that that's all you need to do. This is just, it may be a little over a 1/16 inch thick steel channel, but it will not by itself hold or be strong enough for you to just mount this to your camper and be able to utilize it as a hitch receiver. So I just want to clear that up right off the bat. I did bolt this to the camper, but I did so just to hold everything in position while I weld and create my actual hitch receiver. So that is the only reason that this is bolted to the camper. I am going to leave it bolted to the camper just to hold things in place, but do not think that you can buy just this part, bolt it to your camper, and be good to go. At least not with this camper, because there's not enough strength in this end piece of the frame to be able to do that. So it is bolted to the camper. This is a Harbor Freight part. I'll put a list of the parts I use in the description so that you can see what I used. This was really nice because I've already got my holes right here for safety chains. It's a 2-inch hitch receiver. My bike carrier is going to go right in here. I've got my pinhole back here in the back. These holes here were designed for if you're going to mount it to like a step bumper. But what I've got, and let's go over here to the right side where I've got my template. And I don't have my pipe trimmed yet, my square tube trimmed, but let me see if I can get better light. That's the bad thing about working inside, is it's just hard to get good light. So here you can see my wood template that I've made, and I've got my 4 grade 8 bolts in there that are going to hold it to the frame. And then if I get underneath here without falling down, you can see that that goes all the way up, and the trailer frame is actually sitting on the mount. So that way it helps carry that load a little better. And I'm just struggling here with light. So I back off here. I got my 2-inch tube through there, and I don't have that trimmed to size yet. I just bought 2 pieces 30 inches long. Thought I had that already, but the tube I had was too thin. So the plan is we're going to mark this to size and get it cut to the length that I need. And then we're going to tack everything together on both sides. Well, I guess first I'm going to go cut my steel plates and get them ready to go. Once I get the steel plates cut, then I'll get this measured, cut the size, and then we'll tack things together, and I'll take it back over to the shop at the house and weld it all together and bring it back. Now the hole, or the circle that I've got drawn on here, that is where I intend to mount the lug or the pipe for my jack, my new stabilizer jack. And I picked this location because it's a nice area. And let me grab my stabilizer jack that I'm going to use, and I can explain better how this is going to work with the stabilizer jack. But in the end, this is going to be cut off and flushed here with the side plate for the receiver hitch. So this will not be sticking out. So let me grab the stabilizer jack and I'll talk you through that part. Okay, here we have the jack that I'm going to use for the stabilizer, leveling, and recovery jack on the Bushwhacker. And if you're thinking the same thing I'm thinking right now, is that jack is huge. Well, it is in the fact that it will go from its height right now up to 28.5 inches. But the great thing about it is I can take this thing all apart and cut it down to the size that I need. And that's awesome compared to what I've been having to try to find a jack to work with. The other 2 jacks, like I said, they were just too short. They would level the camper, but on level ground like this, if I go to a campsite that the ground fell away on, then I'd have to be blocking it up, and I just didn't want that. So picked this up today. Like I said, trying to find parts is just frustrating anymore. Our Harbor Freight in town had one, and the Harbor Freight 30 miles away from here had one. So I spent most of my morning just driving around getting jacks. But after I got it, I'm kind of tickled to death because I really like this jack, and I know of several other uses that I have for it already in my mind. So the thing about this jack is it's quite large. It has a 6-inch by 8-inch plate on the bottom of it, and that's just crazy big for what I'm going to be using it for. So we're going to be getting rid of that, putting a smaller foot on it so that we can utilize it better with our camper. Because when this is in the stowed position like this alongside the camper, that would probably catch so much air we'd lose 1 or 2 miles per gallon on our gas mileage. So we're going to put a smaller foot on it right off the bat. The other thing is we can separate the pieces and cut this upper part anywhere we want. And then I'll cut the inside tube to the length that I need. And the really neat thing about this jack, it's 3 tubes instead of like a standard tongue jack, which is 2. You can pull this pin at the bottom and raise this up, put the pin back in at a higher hole, and get that much more range out of it. So that's just crazy. I mean, if we back this thing off the side of a cliff and the ground really falls away and we want to level it up for the night, we've got an infinite amount of adjustment here. So drop that back down, put that back in. Now that said, I'm not real crazy about that type of pin, but the fact that you can do that with it is really pretty neat. So how this is going to work once we get it cut down to the size we want is this is the mount that goes onto the jack, and you have to weld this onto the jack. But the great thing about that is you can weld this mount anywhere vertically that you want it. So that right there for a project like this, oh my gosh, that's like a gift from heaven right there. So this will get mounted onto the outer tube of the jack, and then this round pipe with the 4 holes in it gets welded to the hitch side plate. Now, I already knew that this was going to be an issue because of the way that the frame is tucked in underneath the edge of the camper. In order to get out far enough, I need about another 1/2 inch. So I ordered in extra of these pipes So I'll cut this down, weld it to this pipe, and then weld both those to the side plate. And that will get me out here far enough that with my mount all put together on my jack, then it gets me clear of the side of the camper. So we're going to cut this down, get the height we need, weld all this together, and then weld it to the side plate, and then we'll be good to go. Now, I don't like this handle sticking out the way it does, so I've got a couple different options that I'm going to explore as to how to get rid of this handle and just clean this up. So when it's back here in the deployed position, there's not something back here to get caught on. So, I've got a plan to address that. But, like I said, it's a lot of work for what we're going to get in the end. But I think to have the ability to not only stabilize but level and recover your camper in the event of a flat is going to make this all worthwhile. That and the fact I just kind of want it. So when you want something, you'll do what it takes to make it happen, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go over, cut my side plates out of the steel, get them all shaped, get them mounted to the camper, and I'll get back with you and show where we are at that point. Okay, back from the shop, and we now have two steel hitch side plates mounted to the camper and all 8 holes lined up, which I'll have to admit doesn't happen all the time. But I took my template, which I knew the holes were good for, and clamped that to my steel plate and used transfer punches to accurately mark the holes that I had drilled. And a transfer punch is essentially a punch that's the same size as your hole with a center punch in the center of it. So when you put it through your hole, your template, like what I had, and tap it, you'll get a mark where exact center is for that hole. And it worked out just the way that it should work out. Um, Cut my square holes. Admit I had to do it the old school way. Normally on projects like this, I run to town to a metal shop that I use, and they have a big punch with a 2-inch square die, and they can just put my plate in there, drop the punch down on it, knock that hole out, and your 2-inch pipe just slides right through there. It's quick, it's easy, $10, I'm out the door. They broke that die last week, so I had to do it the old way. But everything lined up, went in just fine. So now what I'm going to do is mark where I need to trim off my tubes on both sides and take my hitch off the camper and grind the paint off of it so I can tack weld this all together. And then once I get that done, I'll take it off, take it back to the house, weld it, and I'll get back with you once I get to that point. Okay, back with you now. We've taken our jack stand to the shop and cut it down, and you'll see a few differences here. Immediately I removed that big 6x8 plate that was on the bottom of it because that was just too large for what I was going to use it for. And I've got these 2x3, 2x4 plates, I believe, is what they measure, from Curt, and I'll put a list of that in the description as well. But I use these on quite a few projects and really like them for what they are. We typically put down a pad anyway that's larger than the foot of the jack stand when we get to camp to spread out the weight so it doesn't sink down on the ground. So I just didn't need that big 6x8, and it was going to be in the way sticking out there. So that was gone. I took about 6 inches off of, a little less than 6 inches probably, of the overall length. I thought it would actually be more than that, but by the time I balanced it out past the pivot point that goes on the jack stand, I didn't need to remove as much as I originally thought. I did remove some of the inner tube because this jack stand, I got to tell you, I'm really impressed with it. For Harbor Freight, it seems to be a pretty good product. The neat thing about this is the sliding inner tube. So instead of 2 tubes like a traditional jack stand has, this has 3. It has the outer, the inner, and then the actual foot tube that slides inside that inner tube. And you can put this at any position. So I mean, it's really a neat deal. So let's stick it back together here. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure that I had everything right lengthwise so that when I get it mounted to the camper, we're good to go. So one last check here before we go and weld our tubes together. So again, to use this jack stand, you have to weld the mount bracket onto the jack stand itself, which creates an issue for people that don't weld. But for those of us that do, that's an awesome deal because you can place it anywhere on that tube that you want. So I had a mark. Hopefully I can see it. Yep, it's right there. So let's see if I can hold this all together. I'm still laughing about this sticker that says "Do not remove." That's not going to survive the weld. It's going to be gone. So I guess I could have clamped it on there. So about right there is where I want it. And it's going to sit just like that. So we've got a good almost 6 inches down to the ground, and the camper's sitting level here in the garage. So that should be more than enough clearance. Worst case scenario, we back up on a hill, you're a sloping campsite that we need that much clearance for the back end. We've got that. Plus, the other thing to consider is if the tire goes flat, you're going to lose that amount of elevation from the flat tire. So in that case, then you're going to need something to, you're going to burn up that distance pretty quick. So that'll work. And if it drops more than that, and I can't swing the jack down, you can always unhook the trailer, lower the tongue of the trailer, which will raise the rear, and then you can jack it up that way. So, there's multiple ways to get it done, but to have the recovery jack that, one, is tall enough to get the trailer in the air, and two, that is attached to the trailer, I think is going to be a big plus for us. So I think this is going to work well. That height right there gives me plenty to work with. And the neat thing about this, so let's say we get to camp, it's a level campsite like what we have here. What you can do is pull this pin, drop it down to the first hole, and I think now, oh yeah, so now you've only got to crank your jack down 3 inches. Jacks are really geared low in order to get the power they need to lift it up. So that saves you probably 40 turns of the winch handle here by being able to just drop that pin down like that. So I really like it. That's pretty slick. Like I said, I've got other ideas in my head already for how I could use these jacks on other projects. So I think I'll be revisiting the store, picking some more of these up. So I'm going to go back to the shop now. If I can get this pin back in, there we go. I'm gonna go back to the shop and cut my other jack down for the other side, just like this. And then I'm going to weld my tubes onto my jack. And like I said, I've got to, I was laid on the floor. So I need to extend my tubes a little bit. So I bought spares. This is the one that came with the jack. So this is the outside of it. What I'm going to do is trim this one off, right at the hole there, to get about another inch, 3/4 of an inch, just so I get outside of the body of the camper. So it's going to sit in there like that. Put the pin in. We're going to get rid of that chain too, because that's just hideous. So that's going to sit in there like that. So you can see I just need to get clear of the body, so I don't need to weld the whole boss on there. So I'm going to shorten that up and then weld those two together to get me outside of the camper. I don't want to be any further outside the camper than I absolutely have to be, because the further out here you get, the more load you're going to put on this in this direction when you start jacking it up. So you really want to keep this as close as you can to the mount point of the jack stand. So I'll shorten that up, get these two welded together, and we'll get back with you and show you what we get done. Got both of the jack stands cut down now, and got the mounts welded onto them, and I want to share a good one on myself here, hopefully to help prevent the same thing from happening to someone else if they try something like this. Sometimes I'm a real idiot. I just get caught up in the moment and get ahead of myself, and then that's usually when I screw up. And what I did was, I had everything measured and ground down and all ready to go. And when I went to mount or weld this bracket onto the jack stand itself, I got everything marked, all measured, lined up, squared, took a big C-clamp and clamped it together tight to the clamp to the jack itself so it wouldn't move. Laid down 4 nice beads of weld and popped my helmet up and looked at it, and I thought, oh, that doesn't look too bad for a hack like me. And then I went to swing the jack handle. I welded it on the wrong side. And it was just wrong. There was no way the jack would work. And, it was one of those moments that you just think, what an idiot. So if you're ever curious about the integrity of your welds, just cut 1 or 4, in this case, apart and see what kind of penetration you got and how long it takes you to get that sucker apart. I worked a good 10 minutes getting this bracket cut off of the jack itself, because I had to be kind of careful. I didn't want to cut into the jack tube. So it got some really good penetration, and that sucker was stuck on there really well. So if you do something like this, or if you ever use one of these jack stands, take a second and make sure you got the bracket on the right side that you want it on before you go and weld it on. You could actually put the bracket on, this side, one of the 3 sides, and even down below this if you wanted to, just as long as you can swing that handle. I obviously you can see where my bracket wound up. There was no way the handle was going to get swung. So, that was just a stupid thing on my part, and I wanted to share that with you so that hopefully it doesn't happen to you guys. And I really hate that chain. So what I've done, obviously I've got the bracket welded on both my jack stands for the left and right side, and I extended those tubes like I showed you I was going to. I've got a couple here extras, but this is the factory one. This is the spare one that I bought, and essentially I cut it off right at the holes, and it worked out to be the exact length that I needed to get just clear of the side of the camper so the jack can swing but still be as close as possible to the camper so there's no extra force being applied to this than absolutely necessary. So we'll pin this back together and I'll show you what my next step is going to be. So essentially we're going to weld this, the welded boss mount to the vertical side plate of the hitch that we made. So what I'm going to do is just get everything squared up. I've got my level here. I've got the camper leveled up fore and aft and side to side. So if my jack stand is plumb, then it's going to be plumb to the camper itself. And then I'm just merely going to spot weld this in 3 or 4 places, remove the jack or remove the hitch from the camper, and then finish welding with it separated. And the reason I'm going to do that is that heat will transfer through this side plate really fast, and it'll cook the paint to the camper frame rail on this side. And I don't want to just destroy that paint underneath there. So I'm just going to merely tack it in place, remove the hitch, weld it, and then get everything cleaned up, get it painted, and then put the hitch back on for the last time. And it will probably be on there for the rest of the time. So let me get this all squared up, get it tacked, and I'll get back with you here probably when I get the whole thing wrapped up and show you what the finished product is. But I'm getting pretty excited because we're getting close to the end here, and I'm liking this. It's going to be a nice deal. And like I said, and even like what I said earlier with the pin and being able to extend that foot, that's what I did. I just extended that foot down the foot tube one hole, and I just swung the jack probably half dozen times, and I'm at the elevation that I want to be at. So that's a really slick deal. I'm going to like that. So I'll get back with you here in just a bit when I get this all welded together and painted up, and we'll show you the finished product. So here we are on day 2, and we got a finished product, and the clouds have parted, the sun came out, the wind stopped blowing, and it's a beautiful day. So we decided to finish this video up outside and show you what we wound up with here on this project with the rear hitch and the new rear stabilizer and recovery jacks. So as you can see, it's in the stowed position right now for travel. It streamlines with the camper, flushes off right here at the back, and I was able to do that because this bracket welds on to the tube at any position you want. You might notice that the handle is missing, and that would be because I cut it off. If not, this handle is going to be hanging down like this, and it's going to have to be tied up, while you're driving or swinging back and forth. And plus, I just didn't want this sticking out for someone to get caught on when they're walking past. So in exchange for the handle, what I did is I took a 3/4 inch nut, and once I cut that shaft off, I was able to drill the nut to fit the shaft, clean the shaft up, and welded the nut to the shaft. So now I picked up this handy dandy little composite 3/8 inch ratchet at Home Harbor Freight today for $4 on, I think it was on clearance, to be honest with you. And then I picked up a $3 socket at Home Depot. So now, in order to operate it, I just use this. It's got a nice angle to it, gets my hand away from this, and when it's off of there, no one's going to get caught on it unless they really get over there next to it. So when you get to the campsite and you want to deploy the jacks, it's just a simple matter of pulling the pin and rotating them down. Let's walk around real quick and I'll show you the other features. So in the center, we've got our 2-inch hitch receiver now, so we can use this for our bike racks, or I've got an idea for a couple of kitchen gadgets that are going to go in that receiver slot. So it's going to be a multi-purpose device. Now, obviously, this is a lightweight hitch setup, so you're not going to be hooking a 6,000-pound trailer up to it and going down the road with it, but that was never my intention. So this is going to work great. And again, if you saw the beginning of the video where I bolted this to the camper, don't think you can just bolt this to the camper and drive away with something hooked to it, because that's not the intention of those bolts. It was just to steady this and hold it all in position while I built it. And here on the other side, we'll be in the shade, so I'm not sure how well it's going to show, but same situation. We got our jack here, got our pin. It's in the stowed position right now. So when we get to camp, we'll just pull that pin and drop it down. Now, I also showed where I cut off those big monstrous feet on the jacks and replaced it with these small ones. And that's because we carry wood blocks with us, so that when we get to camp, we'll just drop a block down, set the jack pad on that, and go. So let's go over to the other side, back to the right side, and we'll have better light over here, so I'll show you how this is going to work. So just take the pressure off, rotate it down to vertical, and slide your pin back in, and you're good to go. Since the block is going to go in here, and we're on kind of a slope ground right now, I won't need to pull the pin, but like I showed earlier, you can pull this pin, drop that foot down, and reinsert your pin at the higher level right there. But you can see there wouldn't be room for my block, so that's the reason for this. Back up there, stick that in there. Now there is some slop in the pin itself, because if the hole was so tight that there was no slop, then you probably couldn't get the pin in after about a week as it rust to it. So now what we're going to do is just flip a ratchet around here, figure out which way it goes. There we go. And once we get down to the bottom, and it's lifting the whole camper up in the air right now, and it takes very little pressure on this because of the gearing in the jack, so works really well. We'll stick our level back here on the galley just to see where we're at. So we need to come up quite a bit, and that's because we're sitting on a pretty good slope. So
okay, here we go. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm getting closer.
And just a little bit more.
Kind of like boom, all of a sudden it moved a bunch.
Yeah. So somewhere in that area right there, and we pull our ratchet off, and we're good to go. Tire's still on the ground, but we can continue jacking this on up and get that tire in the air to spin it. And that way, in the event that we would have a flat tire along the road, we can use this as a recovery jack as well. Again, with the mount that I made, it's transferring load to the frame, so I'm not concerned about putting undue force on the frame back here, and it all should work pretty well. Now, I'll be honest with you, it was a lot of work. I spent most of one whole day, cutting and welding and fitting, and that's generally the way it goes on projects like this when you're doing it for the first time. Was it worth it? To me, I think so, because I despised the old jacks that were on it. I wanted to hitch. This accomplished two goals at one project. So I think long term, I'm really going to enjoy having this set up. I did learn and reinforce a few things that I already knew. One, your best looking welds will be where no one can see them. Two, paint sticks to your skin much better than it does to metal. And three, metal or the welding slag, when it drops and falls on the screen of your cell phone, even with a tempered glass protector, it will melt through that tempered glass. So my cell phone screen now has a really funny pebble type texture to it, because the tempered glass got melted from welding slag when it fell out of my pocket underneath the camper, and I didn't know.
Why was your phone out?
Well, actually, it wasn't out. It fell out of my pocket while I was laying on the creeper, and I didn't know it.
Oh.
Strange things happen when you're welding. I've set more stuff on fire and didn't know it until after the fact. I mean, it's just the way it goes. But again, I just wanted to share this with you. It's a lot of work, but in the end, I think it's really worth it. I will share the caveat here with you that I'm not a professional. I just did this for myself. So if this is something that you decide to do, consult whoever you need to consult to make sure that you get it done right. But it was a lot of fun. So like I said in the beginning of the video, I had several subscribers reach out to us and ask us if everything was okay here, because there for a period we weren't putting out videos. And I said everything wasn't okay. And if you've seen any of our past videos, then you've probably seen Wilson running around. We lost Wilson on January 23rd this year. And it's just kind of crazy how a pet like that becomes part of your family and becomes part of your everyday existence, really. And I've really struggled with dealing with his loss. And there for a period of time, I didn't care about hardly anything, much less putting out YouTube videos. I still worked. I was still creating. I made some neat projects. I just didn't have the desire to film. Um, but it's a big loss. And if you have a pet, you probably understand that. And we're probably gonna miss him every day for the rest of our lives.